All this stuff is not bourgeois. This is about the idea of people doing stuff together with each other where they live. This is a no-income community of immigrants from Africa and Latin America. Raised planters, taking back their courtyard, new play equipment, handball courts, new murals, fruit trees, and a barbecue pavilion. Tearing up concrete, of course, creating shade and places to be. This is one of the most wonderful and actually effective and inspiring buildings in the United States. This is the rebuilding center of our United Villages. It has the highest recycled and natural content of all buildings in the United States. This is a very significant thing in many ways, but the material aspect isn't as important as the social. But the material, even the long span steel is recycled. Native plants, bioswales, permeable parking lots, that's all good. What's really magic here is that it's reflecting the community that actually drives this thing. Everyone who works here has a voice in the vision and the daily sort of propelling the daily life of the vision of the building. And they all get living wages. They all get covered for full benefits and their families, and they all come from within walking distance. Hundreds of windows that otherwise would have been thrown into the landfill, bringing light and heat into the space. And what happens inside of here is that you can get reconditioned windows and toilets and 2x4s and all sorts, lighting, all sorts of different things to take back and use in your community. The second commercially permitted use of Cobb in the United States. This is the main public entrance off of the busy street where people can gather anytime. And as you look up above the columns now, there are these sculptures that express the 4 seasons of the Tree of Life, beginning with spring and then summer and fall and winter. This is sort of public art, but all out of recycled metal. And then about following your bliss. You just don't know what's going to happen. I mean, instead of just being afraid that something could happen, you can also be excited about the fact that something could happen. In this case, we're sitting there working along thinking that, we're just going to change our part of the world. We're just going to affect Portland to inspire other places. And then the Olympics of 2010 call, and they're like, we know you guys have not designed skating arenas before, but we know that you work in helping people to do stuff that reflects who they are. And frankly, the last several Olympics that we've done have burdened the entire nations where these structures have been built. Like, they can't even maintain these things once the Olympics are over. So we need something that the community of Vancouver, BC, and Whistler will actually embrace and support into the future. So if we could start on the front end, involving the community. So we're like, okay, we could do that. So what we end up with is Canadians saying, hey, we don't just want an arena. We grow up on ponds and streams skating as little kids. So we want this arena to work like a pond and a stream. We can make the seating and take it down and put it up whenever we need. But in the meantime, this is a frozen pond. We'll have the columns that support the roof be paired so that they're expressive of love. And then the branches that come up from the tops of the columns will reach up to hold up the planes of the roof, but it's as if the branches are touching clouds above that are floating overhead. Each one of these will be vast fields of photovoltaic cells all together that will freeze the ice in the summertime. So this will be a statement of world-class sustainability as well as a bioregional sort of aesthetic and mentality. And what you're seeing here is the very poetry of sustainability. And after all, beauty is one of our greatest strategies. So, as I said, somewhere along the way, we imagined that people in other cities would start to do these strategic projects in public spaces. Here, supported by the National Endowment for the Arts, a small town on the Oregon coast decides to install several intersection projects, intersection repairs, as part of a strategy for creating new linkages to make their town not just walkable, but talkable. Edges along the water, a plan to rejuvenate the ecology of Bay City after all the landslides because of clear cutting that had devastated the fisheries, to take back the jetty and put in community-controlled micro-enterprises, cooperatives actually, and then linkages across 101 that had cut off Bay City from its namesake. Beginning with the public square, they hoped they would undertake this 20-year vision plan, including this community center. But they decided instead to start with buying the Masonic Lodge and turning it into an arts center, which they have done, and from which they're organizing the rest of the plan. And then it happened in Seattle many times, and the emergence of a city repair project culture there, along with other organizations that are now working with communities to transform intersections around the city, Olympia, Washington, Eugene. The other day in Los Angeles, The largest lizard effigy possibly in the world, 170 feet long, spiraling around this intersection, with two-tone crosswalks that the city had not had the budget to install, a kaleidoscopic bicycle wheel of time in the center. And during the day, there was face painting, all kinds of food being shared, a cold drinks booth. There were even solar ovens baking chocolate chip cookies. There was a piñata party. Whole families were out together. Here you have a father and a son actually holding the same brush together as they're painting the street. You know, what kind of identification does that build with the community when kids get to do this? This woman was out there all day long with her chair and her umbrella painting the street. She's like, this is a plaza, this is a plaza. For my country we had plazas, now we're going to have a plaza here where I live. This is so great. They were so happy about what they were going to do, they actually had a Tyrannosaurus Rex piñata. They were whacking at that thing all day until they knocked it down. These giant waves sort of washing down the street. There were hip-hop artists out here playing music and dancing until they drew until they could figure out how the line was going to go, and then they'd draw it. They must have danced for an hour and a half figuring out these lines before they started to paint. And then these are calling everyone's attention to the fact that underneath the asphalt are the old rail lines that had been covered up because of the automobile industry buying up our mass transit infrastructure. Criminals. Duluth, Minnesota. There are two city repair projects here. The first one started with these little kids painting the street, organizing their community to go out and do this. The adults got really excited and they're like, wow, let's make a 501c3 and we can start to attract support and do this, all the time legally. And the kids are like, no way. We're going to be guerrilla about this. So there's two city repair projects, one that's official and one that's not. And we just heard that they've done 6 more of these a month and a half ago. Minneapolis, Tucson. This one was done just 2 days ago in Venice, in Los Angeles. And this is a triangular piece of land where they've been doing some work around permaculture here. They've mulched the site and they've put in some sort of continuous gabion terracing here. And they started to plant some drought-resistant plants up here. And then just interestingly, this appeared very quickly the other day, during midday, without permission. And it's a crosswalk to get to the site, across from these giant binoculars that are part of a Frank Gehry building. And basically everyone was like, you know what, if they can do that, we can totally do this. Okay.